Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and I want to finish my reviews of Star Trek Prodigy. I only reviewed it up until episode 13, and my opinion on the show hasn't changed that much. I think visually it's really good. Story-wise, it's a bit weak. Some cute moments, not really a lot of funny moments. Unfortunately, I think Star Trek Lower Decks is more entertaining because it's kind of funnier, because it is a comedy. While this show, despite being kind of aimed for kids, is not really that funny. And the characters are fine, I guess. It is aimed for kids, and so maybe I would have enjoyed it a lot more as a kid and not as an adult, even though there are so many references to the other Star Trek shows that kids watching nowadays wouldn't even get all of that stuff. So I guess they're trying to appeal to everyone, put a little something for everyone. So for example, Okana shows up, who we only ever saw in season 2 of TNG in one episode, and also a brief appearance in Star Trek Lower Decks, which was kind of funny because when he appeared in TNG he was carrying like a box of something, some equipment from his ship, and it kind of looked like a boombox. And so when he appeared in Lower Decks, he did have an actual boombox because he was a DJ or something, so at least it was kind of funny. And yet here he just appears as a random character, and there's no point for him being Okana. Like, it could have been any other guy and it wouldn't really matter, so what was the point of it? I don't know. Also, he was kind of a comedic character when he first showed up, hooking up with every lady he sees, kind of like Riker on steroids. So I think that character could work in a comedic setting, and yet here he appeared as just some cargo ship captain, and I do like the attention to detail that his ship looked exactly as it was in TNG, even though why wouldn't he upgrade it in the 20 years that passed since. I also love the fact that his eye patch is nice continuity with Lower Decks, in which he also had an eye patch for some reason. I guess they wanted to make him look more like a pirate, but wouldn't they be able to easily fix damaged eyes in the 21st century? I remember Bashir offered to do it for Martok. Martok simply didn't want an artificial eye because he's a Klingon and all of that, so it makes sense for Klingons to want to keep their scars and all of that because it's a sign of honor from their battles, I guess. But why would Okana not fix his eye and have an eye patch instead? The only way I could accept it is if his eye patch was actually secretly like Geordi's visor or something. It had some extra features and that's why he wanted it. Then I'll be fine with it. But no, apparently medical technology isn't really that great, maybe outside the Federation. So anyway, stuff like that doesn't really make sense in the context of it, and so just because they wanted him to look cooler, I guess, more like a pirate, that's why he has the eye patch. But at least it's nice continuity with Lower Decks. And his ship also looks exactly the same as it did in TNG. And speaking of ships, Admiral Janeway is chasing them around on the USS Dauntless, which at first I thought it's kind of a continuity mistake, because when that ship appeared in Voyager, it turned out to be a fake ship made by some alien who wanted to punish the Voyager crew for helping the Borg previously, which later destroyed his planet. So he wanted to trap them, and so he made up that fake transmission from Starfleet and made it appear as if Starfleet sent the Dauntless to rescue them so that they will board it, and then it turned out to be an alien ship just pretending to be a Starfleet ship. And yet now Admiral Janeway is on the actual USS Dauntless, so either that ship was inspired by that fake ship that the alien made, or maybe that alien took the design from the transmission of Starfleet, which he did pick up a real transmission and simply modified it to fool the Voyager crew, but maybe the original transmission did include something about that ship which was an actual prototype, which they didn't yet send, and so he pretended as if they did send them. So I guess we can explain that away, so it's not really a continuity mistake, but I kind of wish they would have clarified that a little bit. In other parts of the show there was some good attention to continuity. For example, when we see Klingons, they look like actual Klingons, not the STD Klingons. And it's funny, when we see that Klingon ship get hit by phasers, we see that its shields are now made of hexagons, which is something I noticed early on when the show first started, that suddenly all the force fields are looking like that. And then it was the same in Star Trek Discovery and in Picard, and suddenly everywhere across the entire timeline, all the force fields and shields always look like that, because that's the new thing that they invented. And now even the Klingon shields look like that as well. So that's something that I'm not sure if it annoys me or it makes me laugh, but it's just something strange I noticed, that suddenly all shields and force fields everywhere across the whole timeline look like that. And in some places they are respectful to the old Star Trek continuity, and yet in other places they go by the new Trek rules. For example, in the end of the season when they show us San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge, it once again has those solar panels, which really annoyed me. I'm not going to repeat why. I made many videos about that. And that's again something that suddenly happened across the entire Star Trek timeline, even though it contradicts what we saw in other movies and shows that we saw in the Star Trek universe. And in one episode when we saw the Romulans, they have exactly the same weapons that we saw in Star Trek Picard. There's a scene of them skydiving next to a space elevator, and it looks exactly like in the 2009 movie. And in other places we have like chase scenes of them escaping the bad guys on hovering vehicles, and it has that Star Wars feel more than Star Trek. It's not really that much of a problem. I just wish we would have more Star Trek-y kind of episodes of actually exploring some new science fiction idea or something like that, and that is very lacking in the show, unfortunately. Even though we do have the occasional nice idea. We discovered that Dal is actually genetically engineered, he doesn't have any parents, he was made in a lab, and he's made up of many different kind of species, but most of their genes are recessive, and he's mostly a human augment, like those same augments that we saw Eric Sung trying to grow and all of that. So he's augmented with some abilities from many different species, and he meets a scientist lady who activates some of his dormant genes, and then he becomes like a more pronounced hybrid, like he becomes part Klingon, part Vulcan, part Andorian, part telepathic, and he has all the new abilities and all of that, but after that they revert him to what he was like before. And also because of him being augmented, that will be a problem for him to join Starfleet, because Starfleet for some reason discriminates against people who were genetically engineered even if it wasn't their own fault. Which is an idea I'm not sure I like, because you know that was first introduced in Deep Space Nine. Back in TNG they met genetically engineered people and there was no mention of them being discriminated against by Starfleet, and yet suddenly in Deep Space Nine that became like the policy. It's like using steroids, you know, steroids are not allowed in sports. You want to compete in sports, you have to pass a test to prove that you're not enhanced artificially, and so we can view it as the same kind of thing, that they want to be fair to everyone and not have someone getting an unfair advantage. And yet on the other hand, I personally think genetic engineering is a good thing, that in the far future we should embrace it, and so I don't like this whole phobia, but maybe they will deal with this issue in the future. I hope so. Star Trek Strange New Worlds also raised that issue, so I hope they actually deal with it somehow. So that will be a reason for him not to be able to join Starfleet. And also this whole plot of the ship having that secret weapon from the future that will infect all of Starfleet and make them fight each other. I don't really like that plot device, because it seems like a lazy excuse to explain why they cannot just go to Starfleet directly. And even though they have this super fast engine and they like the ideas of Starfleet, but they cannot go to Starfleet and cannot contact them because that will infect Starfleet. So I thought it was kind of a lame plot device for why they cannot go to Starfleet, but at least they resolved it in the end of this season, to my surprise. I kind of expected it to drag on forever, so they're done with that storyline. And also they brought back the Diviner as a villain, and also his robot shows up, and also there's another woman of his species who shows up. That whole plot line about them wanting to save their planet because it was accidentally destroyed by Starfleet in the future is just kind of silly. The motivation isn't really strong enough or logical enough. It's kind of like Nero's plan from the 2009 movie, that even though he's in the past and can easily save his planet, but he's still angry about Starfleet not helping his people in the future and all of that stuff. And also there are some missed opportunities in this season, because you know they show the Romulans, and the final two episodes are called Supernova, and so I thought they're finally going to explain that whole thing, and yet they didn't. So a lot of missed opportunities. They could have tried to tie things together, but it doesn't really make any sense. And Murph hatched from its cocoon, and now it's more like a humanoid creature which can shapeshift, and it helps them fight the Romulans. And I think I prefer Murph when it was just a slug with some slight shapeshifting ability, like you know, like a pet creature that helps them out sometimes. But now it's growing into an actual humanoid, and it reminds me of Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. And what annoys me about the new look is that it has like a small bubble of its liquid floating above its head permanently in the same place without any visible attachments. So I think I preferred Murph the way it looked like before. I have no problem with it being like a shapeshifter, but its normal shape should be like the slug creature. Like, what's the point of it looking like a small child running around? And Dal being genetically engineered and with DNA of many different alien species, that's an interesting idea, but how would they use it? Would they always activate whatever ability his dormant genes have whenever they need to get out of a situation? They did do that in one episode when they activated his telepathy so that he can contact Admiral Janeway telepathically, because they cannot do it through the usual communications as not to infect that other ship. And so he tries to contact her telepathically and accidentally switches bodies with her. So at least that was slightly comedic episode when he was in her body and she behaves strangely to everyone's eyes, and then she's dragged to the brig, which honestly should have happened long ago because of all the crazy stuff she did on Voyager. So it was kind of satisfying to see that. Maybe I should make edits of all of these shows. So anyway, in the end of the season, all of Starfleet get infected by that super virus from the future, and we see all the different ships fighting each other, and we have some cameos of famous ships like the Defiant, and there are some Sovereign class ships, and so there's a lot of eye candy, a lot of Star Trek ships shown correctly, and they all fight each other, so that's kind of cool, I guess. And then they realize the only way to stop it is to destroy the protostar, because the actual weapon is on that ship. And if they destroy it, it will stop Starfleet from destroying itself. And so the hologram Janeway sacrifices herself to blow up the protostar to save Starfleet. And because the explosion is so big, it's like a supernova, so she first jumps to warp and then explodes, because they say it will minimize the damage to the surroundings since the explosion is spread out thinly across many light years. I immediately thought, wouldn't that make even bigger damage to subspace? And in the end they did say it kind of created a rift. So it's unclear if it was deliberately done by the hologram Janeway or what. So anyway, they save Starfleet, and then they come to Earth, and then we see the Golden Gate Bridge, which again we see has the solar panels, which is an idea I hate, because at this time period there shouldn't be any energy problems for humanity. So making the bridge into a solar power station is an insult to intelligence, and why wouldn't you want to keep it at least for people to walk on for fun and all of that? At least keep some small road on it for people, and yet we don't see any, so that always annoys me. You know, back in Voyager, in the final episode, when we see the celebrations when Voyager coming back, we saw people standing on that bridge, and yet now in the new shows, in any time period, back in Discovery in the 23rd century and in Picard and in this show, the bridge always looks like this, without any place for people to walk on, contradicting all the other appearances. So that just annoys me to no end. And they have a hearing for the kids to decide what they want to do with them, because they want to apply to Starfleet Academy and they don't want to accept them. And then Admiral Janeway just takes them under her own wing and just says she'll be their captain, and the ship that she gets out of nowhere is exactly as the ship they just lost, the Protostar. So they have a new Protostar, and this time they will have the real Janeway with them instead of the hologram Janeway. So it's like a convenient reset button. So the hologram Janeway died, the starship blew up. You would think that's the end of the show, but then suddenly it all comes back to normal. Once again, they'll be on the same ship with the same Janeway, only it's the real Janeway now, and once again going off into the unknown. But at least they're done with the silly plot device of not being able to contact Starfleet, and at least the Diviner is gone with his stupid robot, the General Grievous ripoff. I guess it might come back later on. But I really wish they would do some actual new stories next season and not the same stuff again and again and again. And the whole Star Wars and the JJ Trek kind of style is not something I'm against in principle, because it does have the potential for fun, actual adventure stuff. I'm not against that. I just wish there would be some kind of interesting story as well, and not just that kind of stuff. Not just visual fun, but also some good stories. And I realize it's a show made, I guess, mostly for kids, and so I'm probably not going to get it. But you know, I watched TNG as a kid and Stargate as a kid, and all those science fiction shows which did have some actual stories and science fiction concepts and all of that. So why shouldn't a kids show have those elements as well, and not just the Star Warsy, flashy action adventure stuff, which is very fun visually, so I'm not against it. I just want it to have some story as well. And maybe we'll finally get it in the next season when it will be more like a proper Star Trek show. You know, they're now led by an actual Starfleet officer and not just a hologram, and they're going off to some mission to explore the unknown because that subspace rift that formed opened the wormhole. Maybe they'll finally go into some unknown section of the galaxy and encounter some science fiction stuff there. Maybe it will be better next season. So again, I don't hate this show, I just think it can be much better, and I hope it will be. So that's my thoughts about season 2 of this show. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of this in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.